All right, welcome back to Tertullian, part 2. This is part of my series that I'm doing on early Christianity and nonviolence. If you've not watched my previous videos, I recommend go and watch those. They build on each other. Again, I'm doing Tertullian, and I'm going to do Origin next. I'm doing them fairly quick, but hang in there. Tertullian, a couple of the works I used in the previous work was an answer to the Jews. Today we're going to talk about against Marcion. If you remember with Marcion in the Irenaeus videos, Marcion was someone that believed the God of the Old Testament was kind of a bitter, angry. He was a different God than the God of the New Testament. He actually saw the Old and New Testament as being different, or the gods of the Old and New Testament as being different gods. And so that is a heretical belief. You know, as Christians, we believe that the Old and New Testament, they fit together. They perfectly match. And so, more that Tertullian had a connection with Montanism. I mentioned that in the first video. And that he's from Carthage. So this is the first one that we've talked about being from North Africa. So now this is against Marcion. And so notice he's going back and he's kind of doing very similar to what Irenaeus did, was he pointed out how the God of the Old Testament is the same as the God of the New Testament. God has always planned for Christians, he had always planned to reach the Gentile nations in love. And if you see that, it goes all the way back to Isaiah chapter 2. So here he is using Isaiah chapter 2 to show how God in the Old Testament, as this has always been the plan in a sense of sending the Messiah. And of course, if you read the other parts of his book, he talks about prophecies concerning the Messiah. But here we go. But going towards the very end, it says, "And they shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. In other words, they shall change into pursuits of moderation and peace the dispositions of injurious minds and hostile tongues and all kinds of evil and blasphemy." So again, showing that when the gospel spreads, when it goes into a Gentile nation, that they will then start going and they'll start taking their swords, beating them into plowshares. They'll start beating their spears into pruning hooks. They'll start making them into farming equipment, into times of what you would use in times of peace. And so it doesn't just change that they fight, it changes here, pursuits of moderation and peace, but also changes the way they speak, it changes the way they think. And so it goes on, and he goes on with Isaiah chapter 2, "Nation shall not lift up sword against nation." But notice it goes to this. It says, "Now you must deny either that these things were predicted, although they are plainly seen." So again, he's talking with Marcion and I'll use the example of Justin Martyr. You can look at Christians throughout the Roman Empire. Throughout the Roman Empire, there are Christians who have laid down their swords, who have become people of peace, who no longer have that anger and the bitterness and the desire to kill, that they've laid down their swords. And here's telling Marcion, you can't deny it. Here's this prophecy in Isaiah chapter 2 that foretells this coming of the Messiah, and you can see how the Christians, or the Gentiles who've accepted the teachings of Jesus, the teachings of the gospel, how it's changed their lives. And you can see it throughout the whole Roman Empire, and you can't deny it. You just can't deny it. You can look at the prophecy in the Old Testament. There's no other time in the history of this earth that this prophecy has been fulfilled. There's no other Jewish teacher that has taught mankind to live the way that Jesus has taught. And that has actually worked. That has influenced so many people to love their enemies. And so that's with Tertullian. So twice he's used Isaiah chapter 2 in two different books. But again, that part 1, he talked about Christians being called out of the nations. And I like to best say it's almost like Christians are just ambassadors living in a nation. Once they choose to become part of the kingdom of God, now they're just ambassadors. Meaning, how would you live if you were an ambassador in another country? You would obey their laws, you would pay their taxes, but you wouldn't take part in their government and you wouldn't fight in their wars. Now, if their country is in war and you happen to be stuck there, you may happen to help them in their war effort in some way, maybe providing food. We can talk about that in a different video, but that's the way I like to think about Christians who are nonviolent. Often just see themselves as ambassadors living within a country. They've lost connection, I guess you could say, with the military and with the governing. Although they still may influence those. Again, another video. So like Irenaeus, he connects Isaiah chapter 2, verses 3 and 4 with Matthew 5, 38 and 39. Justin, Irenaeus, and Tertullian, they all use the Old Testament to point others to Jesus. So all their writings, I think this is pretty neat, that whenever they're talking and they're trying to show somebody that the Messiah has already come, is that they go to the Old Testament and they look at these prophecies pertaining to Jesus. Now, I'm looking only at Isaiah chapter 2, but if you read their writings, they'll go through all the different prophecies. They'll talk about Isaiah 53. They'll talk about Psalm 22. They'll talk about all these prophecies in the Old Testament and how they're fulfilled only in Jesus Christ. And so we're going to keep going. The next video I'm going to do is going to be Origin. As I said, these are going to be kind of quick, but hang in there. You'll see the point I'm making in just a few videos.